Beijing 2022. Human rights on ice.
Well, the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing are nearing an end with a closing ceremony scheduled for this Sunday. For the past 2 weeks, we've been devoting a segment each day to highlight some of the abuses being committed by the Chinese Communist Party. And even after the Winter Olympics conclude, our coverage of China's wrongdoing will continue to raise awareness on what the Chinese Communist Party is doing, and will speak out for those who cannot. And today, we're going to put the spotlight on what China has been doing with regard to people in a remote region of Tibet. Joining me now to talk about this for today's Human Rights on Ice segment is Dr. Bob Destro, who served as a special coordinator for Tibetan issues at the State Department during the Trump administration. He also served as the former Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor at the State Department. Professor Destro, welcome back to the program.
Well, thanks for having me, Tony.
Yesterday, we covered what we called the second genocide. We discussed what was happening to Falun Gong, but you have highlighted the fact that what's been happening in Tibet also classifies as a form of genocide. Talk about that.
Well, when genocide is not simply the murder of a lot of people, it's the systematic elimination of a people and a culture. And so when we think back about the Holocaust, it was not simply the murder of the Jews. That was bad enough. But they were trying to do is eliminate the whole Jewish people. And in Tibet, you have an ongoing effort by the Chinese Communist Party to eliminate Chinese, or the Tibetan language, its culture, the family structure. They even want to take over the selection of a new Dalai Lama. So basically there would be nothing left of Tibet other than a place on the map.
Well, you could argue that the Chinese Communist Party has had significant success in accomplishing their mission. If you go back to the Summer Olympics in 2008, there was a lot of conflict. The Tibetan people were out front. They were protest. Not a peep now. In fact, many Tibetan parents send their children, are all forced to send their children away to boarding schools where they're taught Mandarin Chinese. They've lost their Tibetan background and heritage. So, essentially, we're seeing that eradication right before our eyes.
Yeah, no, that's the whole point. That's the whole point. And keeping the Tibetan diaspora, all the people who have emigrated together is very, very difficult. And in a generation or two, if not sooner, there will be no more Tibetan language, and without the Tibetan language, you really can't have Tibetan Buddhism either.
So, we've seen this with the Uyghurs. We've seen it with Falun Gong. We've seen this now with the Tibetan people. We've seen this with house churches, with the Christians. Anyone who, what is it that classifies someone as a threat to the Chinese Communist Party?
Anybody who doesn't buy the program. That the United States is a threat to the Chinese Communist Party. This is their view is total domination, unlimited warfare, and if you stand in their way, then they get rid of you, and they'll try and buy you off, at least at the beginning. And if you can't be bought off, then they'll take more drastic measures.
So, Professor Destro, what does this say about American corporations that have been largely silent on the abuses of the Chinese Communist Party, and I would say NBC, that is covering the Olympics there, other than just the opening segment where they made some, vague references to it, to the abuses that are being raised by others. In fact, they said alleged abuses. What are we to make of corporate America?
Well, corporate America has been complicit with the Chinese Communist Party for a long time. And it's all about money. Really, it's about money. And even Chinese dissidents will tell you that the Chinese will not come in, and they don't do strong arm tactics at the beginning. What they do is they do the strong arm tactics after they try to buy you off. So they'll come in with a nice $50,000, consulting fee. We've seen that with some of the professors who've been arrested here. The Chinese, many American Western companies have helped the Chinese build their own surveillance state. I mean, Honeywell was very deeply complicit in Xinjiang in the development of the surveillance state. So I think American companies actually do think that they can bridge a gap, a cultural gap. What they don't understand is that they're going to be eaten alive just like everybody else.
Well, my take on that from my vantage point, Professor Destro, is that while many in the corporate world thought they could change China through trade, I think, unfortunately, the evidence suggests the opposite, that China has changed corporate America. They have lost their moral compass, in my view. Professor Destro, always great to talk with you.